The Effigy by Zhou Dedong, the Tumu'er oil team was far from the city on a vast meadow. The nearest town, Fictional, was still about 3 miles away. Everyone on the oil team was a young man. Any worker newly brought into the petroleum system, as long as he was male, had to spend a few hard years warming up in Tumu'er before he could be transferred back to the city. People came and went there every year, like troops rotating through a post. I only worked there for half a year. It made no difference to me where I went. I just wanted to gain some experience. 3 years later, I posted a notice online looking for former comrades who had once worked at the Tumu'er oil team. As it turned out, a few hundred people answered. We often chatted online talking about that desolate meadow, the several red brick buildings of the oil team, and that beautiful stretch of youth. One of them was named Li Zhanwang, and he had worked at Tumu'er 18 years before I did. When I chatted with him and heard him mention a name, Lu Mumei, I felt a strange jolt because I had once had a fleeting affair with Lu Mumei. Under my questioning, he told me an old story from long ago. As I listened, my heart grew colder and colder because the story he told was far too familiar. It was my own experience. Life is not a play. A play can be designed, changed. Life cannot. So each of us lives with utmost caution. The simplest example, in a play, when someone dies, they can still stand up after the curtain call. In real life, once a person dies, they can never come back. And yet 3 years after I left Tumu'er, I suddenly discovered a huge secret. The story I had lived through at the Tumu'er oil team had also been lived through by another man. Same place, same girl. Only 18 years apart. The plot was almost identical, even the dialogue. It was as if the same play had been performed twice. The most terrifying thing was this. The girl in his story had already died 18 years earlier. 18 years earlier, Li Zhanwang was riding a motorcycle across the meadow. Back then, he was still young, his black hair as lush as the grass on the flatland. He was on his way to Fangshan town. As he rode along, he saw the back of a girl ahead on the dirt road. She was walking while bending down to pick wildflowers by the roadside. 18 years later, I was riding my motorcycle to the Fangshan town post office to mail a manuscript. The sky was blue, with a few snow-white clouds hanging in it. Dazzlingly bright, on the flat meadow, flowers were in bloom. Between heaven and earth, only the motorcycle engine could be heard. Ahead of me appeared the back of a girl in a red shirt and white pants, strikingly vivid against the meadow. I opened the throttle and caught up with her. The winding dirt road was narrow. When I reached her, she pulled over and waited for my motorcycle to pass. Instead, I slowed down and stopped beside her. "Excuse me, how do I get to Fangshan?" I asked. Actually, I knew the road led straight to Fangshan town. I just wanted to make a story out of it. She looked down at the wildflowers in her hands and said, "Keep going straight and you'll get there." Her lips were red and her teeth white, and her eyes rippled like water with every blink. She was quite pretty. "Ah, thanks." As I spoke, I twisted the throttle with my right hand, pretending to leave, then said as if something had just occurred to me, "Hey, where are you going?" "Fangshan." "Do you live there?" "Yes." "Let me give you a ride." She looked at me, then at my motorcycle, and hesitated for a moment. "I'm from the oil team. It's fine. Get on." She came over a little shyly and awkwardly climbed onto the back seat. I said, "Hold on to me." She stretched out both arms and gently wrapped them around me. I could feel the fullness of her chest and abdomen. The motorcycle surged forward. "What's your name?" I shouted. "Why should I tell you?" she shouted back. "If you don't tell me, I already know. What am I called?" "See, you just told me." "What did I say? Didn't you say you were called what?" "You jerk." The wind roared in my ears. The bunch of wildflowers trembled wildly against my chest, fragrant enough to make one drunk. After many twists and turns, she finally told me her name, Lu Mumei. 18 years earlier. That was how Li Zhanwang and Lu Mumei met later. Lu Mumei came to the oil team several times to borrow magazines from Li Zhanwang. She always wore a red shirt and white pants. 18 years later, Lu Mumei was quite full-bodied, and her skin was very fair. Her eyes were small, narrow, and curved, and she smiled faintly with a smile that seemed sparing, as if she never used more than necessary. She always looked that way. There was never a hint of surprise on her face. Fangshan town was rather isolated, and you could hardly see any newspapers or magazines there, because I wrote magazines and newspapers were often mailed to the oil team. Lu Mumei was fascinated by those things, and every so often she would come to the oil team to borrow magazines from me. She always wore a red shirt and white pants. Once, while reading an issue of Friends, she came across one of my articles and asked, "Is this Zhou Dedong you?" I took the magazine and pointed to a name in the article, asking her in return, "Is this Lu Mumei you?" She hadn't expected me to write her into an article. She froze for a moment, then said shyly, "Lu Mumei doesn't have to be me. Could there be another person named Lu Mumei?" She looked out the door and said, "I've wanted to tell you for a long time. I saw the name Lu Mumei on a gravestone. It felt very unlucky, and I've always wanted to change my name. What do you think?" "No need. Who knows how many dead people are named Zhou Dedong?" She thought for a moment and seemed to accept my suggestion. "That's true. 18 years earlier, once the oil team held a movie screening, and Lu Mumei came to the team again. That time, the relationship between Li Zhanwang and her changed in a fundamental way. 18 years later, they were showing an American love story. Before the screening began, I arranged for Lu Mumei to sit in the best spot, and I sat beside her. The other workers came out one after another. The deputy team leader, with his booming voice, was in charge of order. He ran back and forth shouting, telling everyone where to sit. The floodlight went out, and the movie began. I said to her, "I'm a bad man. Aren't you afraid sitting next to me? Bad men never say they're bad. Then are you a good person or a bad person? Me? Of course I'm a good person." "Exactly. Bad men never say they're bad. You really are bad." I said I was bad, and you still don't believe me. After a while, I said seriously, "To be exact, I'm a good man who has done many bad things. There is another kind of person, bad men who have done many good things. We just don't look the same." She really turned her head and studied my face. I went on. "This world is made up of good men who have done bad things and bad men who have done good things. Who is a good person? That's an important question, and it is easy to get wrong. Who is a bad person? That's also important, and very hard to tell." She suddenly cut me off and whispered, "Dare to come with me. Some people look timid but are actually bold." I felt that when Lu Mumei said this, she wasn't avoiding the people nearby at all. Some people look bold but are actually the opposite, like me. What are you going to do? If you don't dare, forget it. She smiled faintly, then kept watching the movie. There seemed to be a trace of contempt in her eyes. I looked around, then leaned close to her ear and said, "I'll leave first. You come after me, don't make it too obvious." Just like that. Lu Mumei and I walked out of the oil team's compound one after the other and took the winding dirt road across the meadow. Between the oil team and Fangshan town stood a poplar grove. We talked as we walked, and with perfect understanding crossed into it. Once we slipped into the grove, the dense leaves hid us. She looked at me in silence. I looked back at her in silence. Suddenly she hugged me. I didn't resist. Only fools resist. The night was cool, and the air seemed to have vanished. The scent of trees and grass drifted through the dark, along with her fragrance. When we crawled up from the ground, grass blades and burrs were tangled all through her hair. That stayed on my mind for several days. She touched the tree beside her like a blind person, as if she were searching for some mark. "What are you feeling for?" I asked. She looked around and said, 18 years ago. A man and a woman also made love here." Her words made me feel a little frightened. "How do you know?" She smiled. "The ground still has their warmth. Feel it." 18 years earlier, after they had met a few more times, Li Zhanwang discovered that something was wrong with Lu Mumei. She always carried a notebook in her pocket. Whenever no one was looking, she would pull it out and write something down. Once, she fell asleep in Li Zhanwang's dormitory. Li Zhanwang quietly took out that notebook and found that it was full of routine daily entries. He turned to the last page, where she had recorded what had just happened. June 15, 1975, 13:0. I ate at the oil team, noodles with meat sauce. Li Zhanwang seemed to be secretly watching me all the time. After lunch, he let me nap on his bed. And he went next door to play cards with someone. At first, Li Zhanwang thought this was just one of Lu Mumei's quirks. Later, after thinking it over and over, he finally found the answer, and his head went boom. She had severe amnesia. Only by using this method could she remember what had happened. It was just like how you have to trample out a line of footprints before you know where you came from. 18 years later, Lu Mumei and I had secret trysts in that poplar grove 3 times. Each time I sent her home, and when we reached the front of Fangshan town, she would make me turn back. She never let me escort her into town. To this day, I still don't know where her home was. The night before I left Tumu'er, I met her again in that poplar grove. We sat together for a very long time that night. She knew I was leaving, but she did not mention it. We just sat there in silence. Suddenly, she asked, "What day is it today?" "June 6. "What year?" I thought she was joking with me, so I asked back, "What do you think?" She thought seriously for a moment and said tentatively, 1975. I was stunned for a moment and asked casually, "Do you have a job?" She lowered her head and stroked the grass on the ground. "No." "Why not work?" I don't want to. She sounded a little impatient. What does your father do? She seemed to search her memory for a while, then looked off into the distance and said, he's a stone carver. I really don't know what business a stone carver has in modern society. He carves gravestones. Anyone who dies within dozens of miles comes to him. Anything else, he only carves gravestones. I couldn't imagine that Lu Mume's home was actually filled with gravestones, each one carved with an unfamiliar name. I pressed on, unwilling to give up. What does he do when nobody asks him to carve gravestones? Then he carves one for himself. She paused, then added, that's his hobby. I felt a chill in my heart. What do you usually like? Me? Writing a diary. She lowered her head and said a little shyly, whenever I have nothing to do, I write in my diary. 18 years later, Li Zhanwang quickly found a girl in the city, and by marrying her he managed to get transferred back to the city. Every day he was busy, and little by little he forgot that meadow. But half a year later he suddenly received a letter from Lu Mume saying that she was pregnant and that the child was his. Li Zhanwang was dumbfounded at once. To escape responsibility, after much thought he finally made a despicable decision. The next day, he took leave from work, lied to his wife, and rode a bus back to Tumu'er. Lu Mume's belly really was swollen with pregnancy. Li Zhanwang had not come back to keep her company. He found an opportunity and stole all her diaries. He destroyed her memory, but he still didn't feel at ease. He hid in a small inn in Fangshan town for half a month, and then he suddenly appeared before Lu Mume. It was dusk. Looking at the man before her, Lu Mume slowly furrowed her brow. She seemed to find him familiar, yet no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't remember. She was painfully searching her memory, searching and searching. In the end, Li Zhanwang hardened his heart and left. He left the heavily pregnant Lu Mume, and the child still growing inside her, in that strange little town, on that strange little street, in that dim dusk. The moment he turned around, tears streamed down his face. Another half-year passed, and someone from the Tumu'er oil team came to the city with terrible news. Lu Mume had died. She died giving birth. It was a difficult labor. 18 years later, more than half a year after I was transferred back to the city, I received a letter from Lu Mume. There was no return address, only the words "see" inside. She said she was pregnant and hoped I would go see her. The news stunned me. The letter left no way to contact her. She only said that on the night of May 28, she would wait for me in that poplar grove. That was the time and place of our first lovemaking. On May 28, I hurried to Tumu'er. The bus from the city to Tumu'er only ran once a day, and the trip took several hours. I arrived at that poplar grove very early and waited for her. My feelings were a mess. Marriage itself still felt far away to me, and now a child had suddenly appeared. I couldn't accept it. As dusk was falling, she came. She really was pregnant. Her belly was huge. Why didn't you abort it back then? As soon as she stood in front of me, I blurted out in irritation. She looked at me blankly. I felt my attitude was too cold, so I adjusted my expression, took her hand and whispered, "That makes things difficult." She shook off my hand, then suddenly smiled, pulled a lump of something out from her belly, and flung it away. I didn't even see what it was. "Don't be afraid. I'm just playing a joke on you." I froze for a moment, then pulled her into my arms. It was already after midnight when I sent Lu Mume back to Fangshan town. The night was black. All the way there I kept talking about the past as if I were deeply nostalgic. In truth, I was avoiding any talk of the future. Lu Mume said nothing. She just listened quietly. As we walked, I suddenly found that the road under my feet seemed to have been cut off. It was gone. An unfamiliar birch grove stood in front of us. We'd taken the wrong road. Lu Mume seemed to realize it too, looking around constantly. In my memory, there was no such stand of trees near Tumu'er, which meant we had wandered very far. Beside the birch grove was a solitary grave. Its tombstone was tall and imposing, only a few meters from Lu Mume and me. White paper streamers fluttered over the mound. I asked her, "Did you turn around?" "No." "Then tell me, which way is south?" She pointed to the left. "That's clearly north," I said. "You're wrong. North is over there." She pointed behind her. "Which way is north?" My heart went cold as I stared at her face. She turned again and pointed behind her. "That way is north." Left was south, so how could behind us be north? This was no longer a question of whether we'd turned around. It was as if her brain was missing a few grooves that a normal person would have. That filled me with a deep, piercing terror. Then she turned and started walking to the right. "Follow me. You'll be fine." I looked that way and saw a mass of dark trees. That was the poplar grove. I followed her slowly. Along the way, I said a few things to her and left a few unsaid, but all the while I kept thinking about south and north. That grove seemed close, but in fact it was very far. We walked for a very long time before reaching it. But when I finally saw it clearly, I was stunned. Standing in front of us was still that unfamiliar birch grove. That tall tombstone was a black blur, like a face in backlight, and the white paper streamers at its top flashed in the dark. Lu Mume froze too and whispered, "A ghost wall." "Get out of here," I said. We stumbled on for a long time, but never saw the oil team's brick buildings or Fangshan town. The landscape around us was utterly unfamiliar. Neither of us spoke. We hurried forward while gasping for breath. In the northeast, dawn comes around 3 in the morning. This was the darkness before daybreak. At last, both of us stopped, and that mysterious birch grove was standing before us again. I suddenly remembered what the old people had said. If you run into a ghost wall, all you have to do is light a fire and see clearly the name on it, and it will break at once. It was a rather profound saying. I reached for the matches. She seemed startled. "What are you doing?" "I'm going to see the name on the gravestone." She screamed in terror and ran more than 10 meters away, shouting at me, "Have you lost your mind?" I ignored her, slowly walked up to the tall tombstone and looked back. She stood faintly in the distance. By now she was silent, staring at me intently. I struck the first match, and a gust of wind blew it out. I struck the second, and it went out too. My hand began to shake. The third match caught. I leaned close to the gravestone and squinted at it by the jumping little flame. The grave of Lu Mume. Just then the match went out. I almost fainted to the ground. I stood there foolishly. It took a very long time before I slowly turned around. She had somehow already appeared behind me. The wind lifted her hair and covered half her face. "Did you see it clearly?" she asked, suddenly very calm. I didn't answer. I couldn't be sure what sound would come out of my mouth. "I saw this gravestone before. I told you that." I still said nothing. At that moment, her words were utterly untrustworthy. Suddenly she laughed. On that dark meadow before that ghostly grave, her laughter was indescribably sinister. My hair stood on end. Her voice grew even more eerie. "Now I know the way. My home is behind the gravestone. All right, I'm leaving." With that, she slipped lightly to one side and vanished behind the tombstone. I didn't know north from south or east from west. I stood there like a fool, not daring to move an inch, afraid she might suddenly appear again from behind the stone. After a while, a dim line of morning light began to show on the horizon. My eyes moved past the tall gravestone and saw houses of varying heights. In fact, Fangshan town was only half a mile away. The oil team was south of Fangshan town, and I had circled around to its north. That time I stayed with the Tumu'er drilling team for 3 more days and never saw Lu Mume again. The more I thought about it, the stranger it seemed, so I simply went to Fangshan town and asked around to find out whether there really was such a person as Lu Mume. An old woman told me there was a Lu Mume. She died. It was a difficult delivery. "I don't know if she's the person you're looking for." I was startled. "How long has she been dead?" The old woman counted on her fingers and said, 18 years. Was the solitary grave beside the birch grove Lu Mume's? That night, did I run across the meadow all night with someone buried in a grave? This play had only 2 protagonists, a man and a woman. 18 years apart, it was performed twice, but it used only 3 actors. The actress playing the woman was the same one both times. Li Zhangwang said, "They're all experiences from my youth. You're tired of hearing them, aren't you?" I suddenly began to doubt Li Zhangwang's true identity. Was he someone who knew me very well? Had he taken my experiences and fabricated a similar story to frighten me? Why would he do that? I tested him. "I'll tell you a story of my own. It's very much like yours." "All right," he said. So I told it. The more he listened, the more silent he became. When I finished, he said in a low voice, "Are you playing a joke on me? I suspect you're the one playing a joke on me." After a long pause, he said, "Then it must be my daughter." I froze. She lived? Lu Mume gave birth to a baby girl, and the girl was adopted by an elderly temporary worker at the Fangshan town clinic. Li Zhanwang grew older. He was tormented by remorse all the time, and the child came more and more often to mind. 5 years ago, he took Lu Mume's diaries and went to Tumu'er to look for his daughter. After a great deal of trouble, he finally found his own flesh and blood. That old woman was already dead, and the child had become an orphan. She actually bore her mother's name, and that was a shock to Li Zhanwang. What made Li Zhanwang even sadder was that the child, like her mother, also suffered from amnesia. He found her in an arcade. He called her outside and said, "I want to talk to you about something. Could we change places?" She said, "What place, you tell me?" Li Zhanwang took her to a tea house. The moment they sat down, his eyes grew wet. He said, "Child, I'm your father." She frowned and said, "I'm sorry, I don't remember anything." Li Zhanwang wiped his eyes with a tissue and told her the love story from more than 10 years ago. After he finished, Liu Mumei showed no emotion at all. She only said flatly, "Do you have any proof?" Li Zhanwang pointed at the backpack full of notebooks and said, "All your mother's diaries are with me." She glanced at the backpack and then asked, "What do you want?" "I want to take you back with me." "I won't go with you, leave my mother's belongings here." "Child, leave my mother's belongings." She cut him off and said it with no room for argument. And so Liu Mumei's memories were placed in the brain of Liu Mumei's daughter. And so a tragic love story became a horror story. The end.